Hello, and welcome to episode 131 of The Joy of Coding. My name is Mike Conley. As per usual, hacking on Firefox stuff live today. Thanks for being here. So happy to see you. Let's get into it. So here's my screen, and here's today's agenda. This agenda, for those of you who are new, this agenda is actually available to you depending on where it is that you're watching the stream. There'll be a link to it in various locations. So if you're watching this on Air Mozilla, check out the additional links or handouts section depending on which version of Air Mozilla you're on. There should be a link to the agenda. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's in the video description. That should be down below. And if you're watching this on Twitch, I'm about to drop it into the Twitch chat. Hang on. Boop, boop, boop. There we go. I'm dropping it into the Twitch chat now. Bam! And if you're watching this on, what's the last one? Facebook, it's in a pinned comment down below. Oh, just spat all over my mic. And there's also a link to rate the episode in all of those same places and also in the agenda. It's this big highlighted link right here. This is how you can let me know what you thought of the episode. I take and read all of the feedback that comes in. Doesn't matter how old this episode is. I see all of the feedback that comes in. So 2.5, 3 years worth of episodes, I see feedback coming in for each. And I use that to help shape the series. So do let me know. I've started this thing where I hide a photo of myself inside the form. So if you're curious, you want to see my most recent thanks photo, check out the form, fill it out while you're there, and let me know what you thought of the episode. So a reminder, while we're talking about the agenda, that no plan survives breakfast. I kind of know what I want to do today. I kind of have a sense of how I want to do things, but things could go horribly wrong. That's okay. None of this is pre-planned. None of this is me having pre-written any solutions or really having a very clear sense of how I'm going to do things. I just know what I want to do, and you're going to see me try and solve problems in the raw live. I want to give a quick shout out to the episode guide. So this is a viewer-driven resource. Basically, it's links to the agendas as well as sometimes point-form topics that I cover in episodes. So for example, in episode 125, that's not a good example. In episode 126, you can see that I talked about tab warming and using GDB to connect to the next content process that's used by the browser, that sort of thing. So the episode guide is completely viewer-driven for the most part. I think I've contributed a small number of things here and there, but it's almost completely viewer-driven. And if you have your own notes or things that you want to contribute, I highly recommend doing so. You can send a pull request to the repository, and if you're not sure what a pull request is or a repository is, there's a guide for how to create a pull request that at least one contributor found useful. I haven't actually read through it myself, but apparently one contributor found this link quite useful. So there you go. That's how you do that. I also want to give a quick update on Adzo. Last week I talked about Adzo. Hang on, let me open a can of pop here. Adzo is the little utility script that I'm using to automatically transcribe a number of my videos. And I'm not using any web service. I'm not using like IBM Watson or Google Speech or Amazon or anything like that. It's all done on my own machines using Mozilla Deep Speech. And that Mozilla Deep Speech is another open source project that has a publicly available trained speech model that you can use to try and convert audio, in this case the waveforms from my videos here, into text. And then I turn those into VTT files, which can then be read into by various, WebVTT is what you use to apply captions or subtitles to web videos. And so that's what's going on. I'm using this Adzo utility. If you've not seen it, there's a link in the agenda to the source. It's not a very complicated script. It's mostly just wrapping FFmpeg and Deep Speech and a WebVTT library called PyVTT. And there's already been one contributor who's helped clean up some of the code and make it PEP 8 compliant. And that was great. If you've got more fixes, send them my way. And if you're curious about what you can do to help transcribe episodes, you can go to amara.org, create an account, and then use this spreadsheet to find episodes to help transcribe. So I've already automatically auto-transcribed a number of episodes. I'm up to about episode 36. Some of these videos, it turns out, on YouTube aren't proper. I actually only found this out recently. Some of them cut off too early and on Air Mozilla. Some of them, they're out of sync. So I'm having to go through some of those and correct them. And like this one, episode 124, the audio and video are apparently out of sync, which isn't great. And so I'm going to try and find a way around that. In the meantime, all of these episodes that are done, that have the green done, you can click on these links once you have an Amara account, and then you can help me improve the subtitles. So for example, you can go to episode 13, and then you can choose this button down here that says English and choose Improve These Subtitles, and then you get this really excellent editor tool which will allow you to go into each of the subtitles. Here, I'll show you how to use it. Like I'll hit tab.
Hello, everybody.
It's a little joy coding inception there. And it's got hello, everybody, and then you see me talking about some stuff, and then it starts breaking down. Like around here, this is clearly wrong.
Notes. Here's the agenda. So I want to point something out, actually. So
here's the agenda. So I want to point something out, actually. I think that's what I said.
Screen, my notes. Here's the agenda. So I want to point something out, actually. So I
want to point something out, actually. And I think I said something about the agenda back here.
Get into it. So here's my screen. Let me pull up my notes. Here's the agenda.
Let me pull
so
up
I want
my
to
notes.
point
Okay, so those are the changes I'm going to make. I'm just going to publish them immediately. And then, yeah, those sorts of corrections, very, very useful. The more people help out, the better it gets. Because my plan, my ultimate plan, is to make it so that once these are all nicely transcribed, I can use it to kind of tune deep speech to be more, what's the word I'm looking for? To make it more tuned for my voice and the sorts of things I talk about. Because deep speech was trained on a whole bunch of different voices, on a whole bunch of different text corpuses, I'm going to say corpuses, and I have kind of very specialized language when I'm talking about Firefox and Gecko, and so if we can transcribe my voice properly and get all of the language put into text, I can take that as input to retrain deep speech just for me. And then that should make my theory is that future auto transcriptions will become more and more and more accurate. That's my plan anyways. So check these out. I'll be looking at how far I've gotten through. I'm done up to episode 36. From that end, I've started to go into the reverse order on a different machine, which is a little slower. And so I'm guessing that in the not next episode, but the episode after that, all of the transcription should be done. And then even before that, though, if any of these say done, just have at it. Dive into any of these and help me transcribe, because that would be super great. Because it's a lot of stuff. This is over 10 days worth of material straight. That's no sleeping. 10 days worth of video material here. But a lot of it, like the auto transcriptions, should hopefully help a bit. So it's mostly just correction. Amara.org, it's a great service. I highly recommend you check it out, even just to help subtitle, like volunteers subtitling other things. It's there's lots of stuff, including a bunch of Mozilla videos. I think Mozilla has a bunch of videos down here that are also could use your help. So that's the ADZO update. Sorry, I went a bit long there. We're already 10 minutes in, haven't done any code. So I guess I don't really need to do a self-check. Everything does appear to be working. I want to give a quick plug to a different show that I do. I haven't done this plug in a while, but a colleague of mine, Jeff, and myself, sometimes some other guests, we will periodically do performance profile analysis to find slow parts of the browser that we can speed up. And that's in a separate show called The Joy of Profiling. And if you follow the link in the agenda, you can see that we've got 20 episodes. We do them almost every week. Sometimes we skip a couple of weeks. Like most recently, episode 20, there was a pretty big gap between 19 and 20. It's usually we only do it when there are profiles to analyze and if Jeff's available. Sometimes I do them alone, but more often than not, I do them with Jeff. And if you yourself have a performance profile that you want examined, you can submit one using this link, submit a profile for analysis. And if you're not sure what I mean, a profile is report a performance problem. A profile is what we use to capture performance problem information in Firefox. And there's a link on how to do that, how to capture and share one of these things. And what it's primarily useful for is finding out why the browser seems to be stuck, why it's like locking up or skipping frames. It's not so good at finding out why the browser might be using like all of your CPU, but it's really good at finding why we are skipping frames or locked up or something is stuck. So that's what it's good for, and that's just a quick plug there. So what are we doing today? I'm 15 minutes in and I haven't written or read a single piece of code yet, really, beyond Adzo. The first thing I want to do is review a patch that's in my queue. So there's this project right now to remove an older technology from the Firefox code base called XBL. This project is called the War on XBL, or DXBL. That's what the alias of the bug is, War on XBL, but I think the project is called DXBL, like to remove XBL. And there are a bunch of work's already completed. A bunch of these bugs are closed, but XBL is a way. Think of XBL as like web components from the late 2000s, and it has weird performance and behavioral characteristics that make it kind of difficult, especially for newer developers, to reason about. So we are shifting over from XBL to standard web components, which are more well understood, more optimized, and something that we think we can point more new contributors at and have them understand immediately out the gate. Plus, there's a wealth of documentation about web components that will almost certainly be continually updated, as opposed to XBL documentation, which most of the time hasn't been updated since like the late 2000s or late 2010s or something, early 2000s, maybe 2008, 2009, that era. So in this patch, Dow is removing a binding called the tab browser tab panels binding, and he's requested review. So let's take a look at the patch. So he's removing a binding. Commit message is pretty straightforward. Yep, looks good. So first of all, he removes this rule from tabbrowser.css, and CSS is how bindings are attached to various nodes. So in this case, when we see something that has the class tab browser tab panels, we then use this special rule, mozbinding, to apply this binding to the node that has that class. And so because we're removing the binding, we can remove this rule. So that makes sense. Let's make sure that there are no other places in the tree that use this particular binding. CSS, tab browser CSS, tab browser panels. Here's the binding definition. Then there are a couple places where we refer to the ID, the thing that has ID tab browser tab panels. I guess one of the things is that tab browser tab panels doesn't appear to be used anymore as a class. Oh no, I'm wrong. Here's where the class is added. Switch to the tab panels fork, which does asynchronous tab switching. Right, so tab browser tab panels is what we use to use the async tab switcher. I remember now. So we can get rid of that. And then what we're doing here is we see whether or not, yeah, multi-process browser. So I guess this was like we'd already done this sort of calculation before of like when we're starting up the browser window, we check to see whether or not this is an E10S window. We're using out of process tabs, and we use this sort of weird incantation to do that. But we do that weird incantation elsewhere in the tree earlier on before starting up the tab browser, and it's already doing the same sort of work. So we can just make use of that global variable and not do this work anymore, not have this remote variable lying around that we don't need. So that makes sense. And then He's gotten rid of the part where we add the tab browser tab panels class, which makes sense if you're removing the binding. He's switched some vars to lets. Okay, that's fine. I guess I want to see more about what happens here with the removal. So he's flat out removed the binding. And what was the binding doing? It was wrapping tab panels, extending it, and then making it so that when you set the tab, the selected index, it was doing a tab request tab, and then firing the select event. And now, so that makes sense, that removal. And so I'd say the vast majority of the patch is really just in here, how we now do the request of a tab. And he's doing it inside update current browser instead. And update current browser is called whenever the select event fires. Whoopsie daisy. The select event fires in the tab browser tab box. So on select, what are we doing? He's switched to a let here, that's fine. And then new browser is, oh, a new tab is get tab for browser. That makes sense. And then we check to see if we're a multi-process browser, and if so, then we request the tab. Okay, and then let old tab here, let old browser. Just switch some vars, some lets. And here, instead of using the selected item, which is the new tab, that's correct. New tab. We use new tab instead current tab, and then show tabs, new tab, yep. And then new browser, update, yeah, that makes sense. And then we're just switching over to new browser instead of current browser, yep. Let listener equals, yeah. New tab. New tab, new browser, yep. New tab, yep. New tab here. And so let's expand this a little bit. I want to make sure that everything in this function is being updated. So let's just go through it again. Old tab, old browser. Tab. Date block pop-ups. Okay. Find bar, getting the old find bar and updating the find bar. Okay. Then we fire the tab select event on the new tab. Yeah, okay. And then what else? Let's keep going, and then we're done. That actually is pretty straightforward. So we didn't need to access the binding at all, which was really just holding onto the tab that we'd selected state. Instead, we use the select event on the tab box. Tab, oh, for the tab container, I see, yeah. We get the browser at the selected index. That means we can get rid of this binding, I'm pretty sure. Now down here what he's doing is he's updating a test. Immediate selector element. And he's like, don't do a full selector for our tab panel's notification box. If the element local name is notification box, the element parent node, the element parent node, and element parent node class list contains tab browser tab box. Don't do a full then return element.local name. I think there's a different way of doing this, like element dot document dot body near. Something like ancestor attribute animate after. It's like JavaScript check ancestors for nearest. There's like a element closest ancestor of the current element which matches the selectors given in parameter. But I think we are being a little more precise here because we're thinking that it's always going to be parent node. Local name is notification box. So this is probably fine. I like this patch. This removal makes sense to me, and it means we can get rid of another binding, which is great. So I'm going to give this a thumbs up. This is great. Thank you. I also noticed that Dow pushed to try. If you look at the bug, he pushed to try and it came back, I think, pretty green. Yeah, it came back green. So I think he's okay. So great. I feel pretty good about that. Thumbs up. Let's get rid of that binding. So reviewed. So the other thing I wanted to work on was something we checked out last week, and we actually ran into this little puzzle where we were getting rid of this uninterruptible sync reflow when we're dealing with the bookmarks toolbar as kind of a way of warming up on getting rid of more sync reflows. And for some reason our reflow test wasn't behaving like we thought it should, and we ended up spending the rest of the episode trying to find out why. And I found out why. And the reason is this bug. It turns out that if you have if the DOM has been dirtied, you can do a style flush, but that a style flush will not cause a layout flush. So what that means is it's possible for you to be in a state where you have to do where a style flush is not required, but a layout flush is required. And that's not something we were prepared to deal with. I think currently the current code in, was it promise document flushed? If you take a look at the current code for promise document flushed, what am I looking for here? I'm looking for need style flush. We use need style flush and has pending reflow to determine whether or not we can run the JavaScript. And this is actually not what we want. Has pending reflow I thought was what we wanted, but this isn't precise enough. Has pending reflow means that a layout flush has been scheduled or will soon be scheduled. And that's not necessarily the case, despite the fact that a reflow might still be required. So what I'm trying to say is there are cases where a layout flush or reflow might be required, but a reflow has not yet been scheduled, nor is one about to be scheduled. And that's what has pending reflow returns. So what I needed to do was expose this new function called need layout flush. Need layout flush is exposing the mNeed layout flush flag on the pres shell, and that is something that I think we can pay more attention to and have more confidence, where if need style flush or need layout flush, if either of those are still true, then we should wait for the next tick of the event loop. And if both are false, then we know that we can call our JavaScript and not call style or layout flushes, and feel pretty confident about that. So that's what we needed to do. And so why this was affecting us is because window resizes is one of those cases where the M need layout flush flag, the bit will be set to true, but has pending reflows might not be true yet. There are cases where it's not true yet. And so that's why there's this big comment here where I explain that, where I explain the difference between M need layout flush and has pending reflows. And so I'm just waiting to hear back on whether or not the documentation I added was sufficient. But in the meantime, I can take this patch and apply it locally, and this is what we can work off of while working on our layout bug, or our reflow bug. So I'm just going to import this right now. Here's the other patch. We're going to import this. So I've imported the fix to our, here, let me pump up the font a bit so you can see it. And so we have the fix for promise document flushed with the need layout flushed bit checked out, and now I'll import the test. And what I'm actually going to do is I think I'm going to split this code up, because before I had written this patch so that the fix and the test were in the same commit, and I actually want to split those two up. So let's do that first. So we're going to use HG export, take a look at the file. So browser-based content test performance, browser.ini has the definition of the test, or adds it to the manifest, and then this is the test itself. I'm going to uncommit both of those so that they're in my working directory as uncommitted work. So uncommit. And then I'm going to have a new commit in the same bug called add regression test for add reflow test, window resize reflow test. And I might actually have Florian review that one, because he's been working with the reflow tests. So I'm actually going to amend the commit message there. Okay. So that means that most of the work I'm going to be doing is here to actually fix the layout flush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reorder these for now, so that as I commit, I don't like keep rejigging the parenthood, so that the one that I'm working on is always on top. Otherwise, then I keep obsoleting the test patch, which isn't great. That's what I want to avoid. So now if we look at the graph, I've got the promise document flushed fix here, I've got the test here, and then I've got the fix to get rid of the sync layout flush here on top, and that's what we're going to be working on. So we got some feedback. Well, first of all, I need to build. What am I on? I think I'm on default. All right, I'm going to build. Hopefully this doesn't take too long. I'd hate it if it did. I built pretty recently, so hopefully it'll be pretty quick. But in the meantime, we can read the feedback that Marco gave us in the bug. So Marco said that, well, let's open up the patch while we're at it, or the change. Browser, places, views, and take a look at the same code that he was looking at, 1273. Right. He was saying, could we use get bounds with flushing at this point since we already flushed a few rows above? This for loop can loop for a lot of entries. Excuse me, even thousands, and I'm a little bit worried about awaiting inside it. That's fair, because we did await promise document flushed up here, so chances are we have the document more or less up to date. We can probably get the bounds, the client rect without flushing, and it will be pretty accurate. So I think we can probably do that. And then if we can avoid waiting on document flush, could we loop the whole for inside a single request animation frame? So he's talking about here where inside the for, the number of child nodes could be in the thousands. And so we could get into a state where we queue up a lot of these request animation frames. So he's wondering whether or not we can do this in a separate loop inside a single request animation frame, which I think is a great idea. So let's do that. Let's work on that. So the first thing is here, instead of using get bound and client rect, we should use get bounds without flushing for each child. And in order to do that, we need to get access to the get bounds without flushing API or function. And there is a get bounds without flushing inside DOM window utils. That's the name of the function, and we can see it being used in a couple of other places. DWU, get bounds without flushing. Right, that's how we get at it. DWU, okay. So we'll get access to the DOM window utils, and then we'll say, instead of awaiting in here, if not child overflowed, then we will use let child rect equal child dot DWU dot get bounds without flushing child. If the child is overflowed, and then what we'll do is we'll have two collections. We'll have a children where they are visible and children that are invisible. Let overflowed children equals that. Let visible children, how about hidden children? Hidden children, visible children equal that. And then what we'll do is here we will put this child in the hidden children, push child, and over so we don't need that for now, and otherwise we will put visible children, push child. Right. And then I think the idea is inside this request animation frame, we'll go through for let child of hidden children. We will dirty the DOM here. For let child of visible children, we'll dirty the DOM here. And then we'll brace that. Nodes visibility. Right. I think that'll do it. I think that'll do what Marco wanted. hidden children, visible children. Trying to think if there's a better way of doing this. I suppose you could put all of it, instead of like looping once and then again, we could put this entire for loop inside of a single request animation frame. Because we're using get bounds without flushing. Let's try this. And then put this back. Child overflowed. And then we will we can just uncomment this. We can just, because I'm not sure which one I want to use yet, so let's comment out this whole thing because we might not want to go this route. But after that's done, then we'll do the dispatching of the element of the event. Right, and then we have that. Okay. That allows us to loop over the children once. Whoopsie daisy. All right. So one second. One quick second here. Just have to fix something up. Right with you folks. I have to fix a thing. Okay. All right, so this is building, and let's see how that goes. So while we wait for that, maybe there's another reflow that we can start looking at. So let's take a look. Bugzilla. And we're gonna do an advanced search using the tool, the tag name for the tool that I wrote to find these things, oh no reflow. And we're gonna look for things that are P1. Here's, yeah, there are a few here. Rect, rebuild, just height. Just height's a hard one. Find bar, animate tab move. Oh, I know what one I want to do. I think there's one that's like every time you hover a link. Yeah, this one. Calc mouse target rect, bug 138. This one. It's been given a QFP3. This should be for non-remote pages only. It should be running off these days. I'm actually wrong in this comment. I've realized that comment 11 is just dead wrong. We can still hit this. We can and do still hit this when hovering links in remote tabs as well. I'm setting this to QF P1 and taking, or not QF, FXPerf P1. So FXPerf P1 and taking. So this is a bug that I will now add to my list of active bugs. So let's start a new note, put the link in here. And I think I actually tried to work with this one before, but we can start picking apart what KMag was doing. So what is this thing? Mouse POS tracker, position tracker, presumably. Let's figure out how this thing works so that we can start messing around with it. What is the mouse POS tracker, position tracker? The mouse position tracker is an object, a very pretty simple object. What it does is it has a set of listeners, an X and a Y property. And you can register listeners. And we can call listeners. Now, whenever we start up the window, I think, mouse position tracker is listening after, what is this, during delayed startup. So after we first painted, we use mouse move and drag over is the mouse position tracker. That's what we're listening for. So when we get either of these events, we figure out what the zoom level is, and we determine the X and the Y via screen X, inner screen X, and Y becomes screen Y. And then for each listener, we call the listeners this.call listener, and with call listener we ask the listener to get the mouse target rect, which I don't know, I think there's only a few of these. Full screen, mouse target rect. Let's look. This is the one that's probably most important. The mouse target rect. It looks like that's calculated one time. And the target rect is, we do a style flush here. We get the container. We figure out whether we're aligned right. The container's direction, it's RTL. The panel rec, we get the bounding client rec. So we do a layout flush here. Container. We get our own rect, and then the container rect, and then the mouse target rect is panel rect dot bottom dot top, panel rect dot bottom. And what is this? What is this in this case? This is the status panel. So we're talking about this thing at the bottom. Like, just so we're clear, we're talking about, you notice in the bottom there's this like little thing that shows up, the little status thing to show mail to and then Marco's email address, or like the link that I'm hovering over. That is what this binding's all about. And we're getting the parent, the panels top and bottom, and then the left and the right is whether or not we are, I see, whether or not we are aligned right, if aligned left. If so, left is container right minus panel width, otherwise it's container rect up left. I see. So that's because sometimes if we're periodically we'll like flip over, especially if the link is down in the bottom left, we'll move to the bottom right. You see how the link, oh, my head's in the way, you can't really tell, but here I'll move kind of out of the way. Notice how like normally the link is on the bottom left, and then if I have the link mostly near, like if I have my mouse near the bottom left, notice that the link is actually being displayed on the bottom right. So, you know, if the mouse is getting in the way, we move the link to the bottom right. And I think that's kind of, that's the point. Although this is only calculated once, I believe. Mouse target rect. I don't think it's ever cleared, is it? Oh, it is. Whenever we update the status panel, if val set attribute mouse target rect equals null, then we add the listener. Mirror. Mirror. Status mirror. When we're mirroring the status panel, offset, and that's when we move to the other side. So this is about knowing what, not necessarily moving the rect to the bottom right, but rather knowing when the mouse is near enough to the panel that it needs to be mirrored. And when does that occur? On mouse enter. If right, so if we see that the mouse is entering the target rect, which is down here, then we move, then we mirror. And when we leave it, then we'll mirror again. And this underscore mirror, if we have the attribute, then we remove the attribute. Otherwise, we set it. And if there's a size limit, then if there's not one, then we set one. Okay. I see. So it's all about knowing whether or not the mouse is in the area. And calc get mouse target rect. Calc mouse target rect. I guess the container and the panel might, like, the rects might change over time. So basically we just need to make this lazier, is my understanding. Okay. Okay. One second. Someone's asking me something. Let me just quickly. Answer. Okay. So we need to make this lazier. I understand. I think I understand. And there's something similar for full screen as well, it seems. So was it call listener get mouse target rect, get mouse target rect. And I guess that's for if the DOM full screen. So whenever you go into like YouTube, let's go to YouTube for a second. Let's go to the Joy of Coding, episode 123. And we go into DOM full screen, show controls. So if I go into full screen here, we want, I think, isn't the points that, yeah, if the mouse is up here, then we'll eventually show the exit full screen thing. I think that's the idea. Let's just double check. Browser, full screen, calc, mouse target rect. Mouse target rect with the underscore. Top plus 50, I see. And here, yeah, we'll we get the get bounding client rect. Show nav toolbox. Track toolbox. Or maybe I'm wrong. Add listener. On mouse enter full screen, hide nav toolbox. Oh. Oh. So this is more for whenever you're on Windows, not like OS X when we're full screened or DOM full screen. This is more like, I don't have my Windows machine here, but if you enter full screen and then you put your mouse near the top, we'll show the nav toolbox when the mouse appears near the top at rect top plus 50. Right. Show nav toolbox. Oh, but only when we've entered it. Track mouse is true. Show nav toolbox. Then we add listener for when we exit it. Add listener. And then on mouse enter, we hide the nav toolbox. And show nav toolbox will occur when we expand call key. Show nav toolbox whenever we toggle or whenever we call expand callback. That's when we mouse over full screen toggler or when we do drag enter. Interesting. So the rect that we care about is actually if you put the mouse below the nav toolbox, then it will collapse. I see. So I think this is mostly, I think this bug is about making mouse position tracker really lazy in that it only cares, in that it and its consumers need to use promise document flushed before and or get bounds without flushing to find rects Okay, I think that's the idea. Wow, this build's taking forever. I think it's because I modify, and I should have prepared a build earlier, but I modified NSI press shell, and that's like used everywhere. The header, anyways. So everything required a rebuild. It's a pain. Okay, so how do we make mouse position tracker lazy? Originally, KMag was working on this. And KMag was saying whenever you add listener asynchronously, he was making add listener asynchronous. I don't actually think that's what we want to do. I think we want to make the call of listener asynchronous, not necessarily the adding of the listener asynchronous. Call listener. Right? So we handle the event. So we've got some kind of mouse event. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask our listeners for their mouse target rects after a promise document flushed. And then we're going to see whether or not we are, for listener, we'll call listener, and rect. We'll see whether or not we're inside the rect. And if so, we'll call on mouse enter. Otherwise, we'll call on mouse leave. So that's how it'll work. We'll like handle event will queue up these things. Handle event becomes an event queue, which is waiting for promise document flushed. And then we're gonna flush oh, I see. Maybe what we should do is a bunch of events might come in. Maybe we should wait until promise document flushed and then take the most recent ones, screen X and screen Y, because let me just see here. Evidence screen X. Screen X provides the horizontal offset and global screen coordinates. Right. The most recent one is the one we care about. And we might get a bunch while we're waiting for promise document flushed, presumably. And the last one's the one we care about. So we should have a synchronous handle event, but we should maybe hold on to the event, the most recent event, while we wait for promise document flush to consume that event. So promise document flush fires. We consume the event and then clear the event. And then what we do is inside promise document flushed, we'll get the X and the Y. We're also going to get each listener's mouse target rect. And then once we've got all that, then we'll call each listener. Okay. Okay, I think that should work. And now we need to make sure that all these get mouse target rects are never dirtying the DOM. Get mouse target rect. That's just returning something that's already been pre-calculated, which is nice. Although that pre-calculation probably causes the flush itself, so we'll have to, that just kind of kicks the can a little bit. And this one, calc mouse target rect, we have to make sure it never dirties the DOM. And it does not. It just will cause flushes. We should probably make this use get bounds without flushing. Okay. So that's what we'll do. That's what we'll do. I should really like to see whether or not this works. But the rebuild is taking forever. And we're already a half hour. How long are we into this episode? 1 hour? And this rebuild is like 31 minutes in. It's crazy. But I have a plan. I have a plan for mouse position tracker. So step 1, or I'll use tasks here. Modify handle event in mouse position tracker to hold on to the most recent event and then queue up a promise document flushed. Promise document flushed if subsequent promise handle events get fired, replace the held event with the new event. Once promise document flushed fires, take the most recent event, run, calculate. Okay, maybe that's the first task. Then once promise document flushed fires, clear event, and then inside promise document flushed, call get mouse target rect. Is that what it's called? Get mouse target rect. Target rect on each listener. And then do then calculate whether the most recent event is inside the rect, and if so, call the right function. I think that'll work. I think that'll work. Whew. Okay, so let's start messing around with this then. Mouse position tracker. Handle event will still be synchronous. What we'll do is say most recent event is null. If not this dot most recent event, window.promise document flushed this dot on document flushed. Maybe we can on document flush dot bind this. Actually, I kind of liked what we were doing with the arrow function. This dot most recent event equals event, and then on document flushed It's on the on mouse enter and on mouse leave stuff where the DOM might get dirtied, so we should probably queue that up in a request animation frame. So we'll do on document flushed. We get full zoom. X and Y become that, yep. And then for each listener, we'll do call listener. We'll get mouse target rect. And then for each listeners for each. Call listener. I see. When you add a listener, we might want to do it immediately. When you add the listener. Target rect. Maybe this is where we do a window.promise document flushed here on this one to call the listener so that you can get the mouse target rect. And it's these things. Listener, if listener on mouse enter, on mouse leave. And what are we doing in some of these? On mouse enter and on mouse leave. On mouse enter, then we're doing underscore mirror, which is dirtying the DOM. So you want to do all of that within a request animation frame. I feel like, again, we want to do all of our calculations first. Call listener. You almost want to break this up into two steps. The calculation of whether or not you're inside the rect and determining which function to call, and then the actual functions to call. Okay. So call listener might need to become async, actually. Or rather, maybe this should become call listeners. Call listeners to move the loop in here. Listeners. And then you do like for let listener of listeners. And like that's when you get your continue. And here you queue up the functions you want to call. So maybe like that. Functions to call dot push listener to on mouse enter. Also, functions to call dot push listener to on mouse leave. And then you do a window dot request animation frame. Or let fin of functions to call, you call it. Something like that. And then you can do call listeners. And then otherwise, it's dot call listeners. Listeners. Functions to call. And then this is where you want to like try catch. Catch port error E. And same with this. Try. Rect equals that. Catch E, then we will cu.report error, and then continue. Call listeners, listeners. I think that'll work. Okay. But how to test while we wait? While we wait for this build to finish. DOM. Trying to think of, there's probably something we can do. There's something we can do that's necessary. We can maybe look at another flush. Well, there's a big one. There's like the big one to worry about. So what am I talking about? So we have all these synchronous flushes, and one of the big ones, if I had to look at the big one, it would probably be adjust height here. Yeah. If Photon perf awesome bar. This happens in the awesome bar. What is adjust height? And there's one at rebuild, adjust height. If we take a look at the reflow tests for and it's only in the first open. Adjust height. So there are reflow tests for the awesome bar. Like whenever we do a search, adjust height's a big one. Every time we like type, like this one's when we do a keyed search. We'll do 5. That's actually not so bad. This only happens once. That's 5 times. This one, yeah, adjust height. This one's pretty bad. 51 times, and then when we handle overflow, that's pretty bad too. So adjust height. What is it? How does it work? Let's take a look. So adjust height. When's that called? It's called whenever the pop-up has shown. If this property is set, adjust height on pop-up shown. It is also called on a timeout. And what we do is we look at how many child nodes are in the rich list box. We get the minimum, which is the number of matches in the search results, and the max number of rows. And then we remove an attribute, height. So here we dirty the DOM. And then we try and calculate the right height. And here, yeah, we cause a layout flush here. We removed a height. We get the first row rect. Get bound and client rect. And then we do a style flush here. Transition property. We get the padding, all these things. If the number of rows that we have in our results is greater than the max number of rows, then we set a max height to avoid flicker when growing the panel. We get the, so at this point we've not dirtied the DOM, so these are all but like here we're getting layout again, but we've already flushed, so this should be cheap. We get the second, or we get the last row, last visible row, and we get the height, and then we dirty the DOM right here. We say the max height is from the bottom of the last visible row. And then for each of the rows, if it has force handle underflow, we'll call handle underflow on it. And then we flush again, last row rect. We get the bound and client rect, calculate the height to have the first row to last row shown. We calculate the height. We figure out if we're supposed to be animating, and if we do, then we grow. Otherwise, we shrink. Whew, that's complex. That is complex. According to MX Schumacher, in for of loops, you can use const instead of let. And says that you have a new scope for every iteration. That's true. So down here I could use const instead of like rebinding. Or I'll be rebinding to child every time. But const means that Just go, why would I want to use const instead of let? I mean, immutable by default is probably the best, but I'm unlikely to reassign child. But fair enough. One could use const here. Is there an advantage, MX Schumacher, that you were hoping to highlight if you use const? Is there some advantage? If you use const, it means I can't overwrite child. I'm getting a new scope each time. I can still modify child. It doesn't make child immutable by any means. It makes the variable immutable in that I can't overwrite child, which is marginally better, I guess. But I'm not super worried, unless there's something I'm missing. If you're still watching MX Schumacher on Twitch, do let me know what you meant. But yes, good point. One can use const inside a for loop. So yeah, we do all this like calculate. This is very complicated inside the awesome bar. We're doing all this like sampling and then dirtying of the DOM and then sampling and then dirtying, and that's pretty rough. It'd be great if we didn't have to do that. Now, was there any previous work done on trying to fix this? Adjust height. Where adjust height? Rebuild. Where's adjust height? Here. Did anyone ever take a crack at this? The answer is no. But it can run off timers. So the problem is we want to do these things, but we don't want to flicker too much. That is the problem. If you wait for the refresh driver tick, what it means is we've had the opportunity to paint. And that's good because it means that layout and style have been flushed in order to paint, probably. So the bad news is the user might see one of these intermediary states where we're painting because we're paused halfway through the calculation to wait for the refresh driver to have done the calculation. And that's not super good. So you kind of want to, we almost need to figure out if there are ways that we can avoid a lot of these recalculations or avoid much of these calculations in general. So I think the first step to this is to open a bug, or we already have a bug, to start some notes as usual. So let me start some notes. And we're just going to start enumerating the different calculations that take place. So here are the calculations as they come. Calculate total number of autocomplete results. Calculate maximum number of displayed results. And then calculate height of first row, including padding and margins. Wait, no, just padding, including padding. And what is that used for? First row rect is used for, oh, and then we get last visible row rect. get rect for last visible row. Calculate, what was it? Total height of panel by subtracting first row rect top from last row rect bottom. Now I wonder what this handle over under flow thing is. Sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes it's everything. Remove max widths. That'll dirty the DOM, certainly. Handle overflow. Oh my goodness, and then we flush again. Truncates the displayed strings as necessary. This is a nightmare. For URL bar, do this wacky overflow handling stuff to figure out how if we need to truncate some things. And if so, then what do we do? How do we truncate? Then we set max widths on certain things. Oh my goodness. That is something else. And then last row, get rect for last row total. Last row is num rows minus 1. Height, calendar, have the first row to last row shown. Plus top padding height. Num rows minus 1 rows. But rows could be arbitrary. Oh, num rows is the maximum, right? So you'd think that max rows, oh, if num rows is greater than max rows, in either case, this is the last row, last visible row rect and last row rect. These should be the same, should they not? Not necessarily. Would they? No, num rows is supposed to be the minimum of max rows and the total number of rows and the match count. Well, math min, I think, takes an arbitrary number of things. Style length. And so if it's greater than max rows, then it's max rows minus 1. If it's less than max rows, it's num rows minus 1. So no matter what, this is the last visible rect. Okay, so that's last visible rect again. And then calculate height of the panel again. Rich list box, style max height. Oh, calculate max total maximum height. To calculate height of the panel, because there's max height and then there's height, because we need to be able to overflow. Excuse me. Then we determine if we're animating. We get the current height of the row, get current rect for panel to get its height. For growing or shrinking. And that's it. Okay. So I feel like at least this stuff could be collapsed, but ideally, a lot of this could go away. Ultimately, this is about shrink wrapping some set of rows in a panel and having a cap on the maximum number of rows in that panel, and then being able to animate the panel larger or smaller to accommodate its contents. I believe that's what this is all about. There is a side quest here with truncating stuff within the rows themselves. And that's pretty bad. That might actually be the worst part, because it's clearly doing layout thrashing. And layout thrashing is the set stuff on the DOM and then like in a loop, set stuff in the DOM and then get a bunch of rects, and then set stuff in the DOM and then get a bunch of rects. That is layout thrashing. We should avoid that. Okay. So it's 2:33. This build. Why did this take so long? Am I using a single core here? Is that what's happening? I'm pretty sure I'm using all cores. Hello? Yeah, all cores. I don't know why this is taking so long. Well, OBS is stealing a lot of CPU cycles. I wonder if that is it. At any rate, unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to have a solution to our or an answer to our question by the end of this episode, which really blows. I'm sorry. I wish, you know what, I need to do this next time. I need to make sure my builds are done and ready to roll, that all binary stuff is done, and need to avoid touching headers. That's what I need to do. Or maybe I could find some way of using the local ice cream distributed build stuff on my Mac machine. I do it for Linux, but I used to do it for Mac, but I didn't because I couldn't get symbols working properly. But maybe it's time I get back to it. So I think I'm going to end it here. I'm going to cap the episode here. Hey, thank you so much for watching episode 131 of The Joy of Coding. Hey, let me know what you thought. There is a link, again, in the agenda to rate this episode for the folks in Twitch. I'm going to drop this into the Twitch chat. Rate this episode. There's a a form there you can fill out. Let me know what you thought of the episode. Let me know if there's anything I can do.
It's me, Mario.
To make things better for you, or to make this stream a little more interesting. So just to recap, what did we do today? We reviewed Dow's patch. That's done to remove an XBL binding. We took Marco's feedback, applied it, and I think we have a patch that might actually solve this problem that we might consider taking. I need to see if it works and passes my own test, and then we can put that up for review. And then we worked on this other bug. Let's put this in here. This other bug where we were getting rid of a synchronous flush in, what was it? Promise. Arg, where are you? Got it here in my active bugs list. Calc mouse target rect. So I'll put this in the agenda. I'll put the other one in the agenda too, but I won't make you watch me do that. I'll cap the episode here. Hey, thank you so much for watching episode 131 of The Joy of Coding. I will see you hopefully next week, and I'll give you an update on how these bugs went, because hopefully by then my build will be done. Fingers crossed. So on that note, have yourselves a great week. Take care. Bye-bye.
The joy of coding.
See ya.